Hello.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Are you the only one through Zoom? Through Zoom?
I believe so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Then let me make you co-host. Okay, so you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Let me do that. And there we go. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, and then did you already figure out, I don't know if either Brian or Brittany, are they going to look at Whova and field questions from there if there's any?
Yeah.
Okay. Well then, perfect. I think you're already good. You're good to go.
All right. Very good. Thank you for your help. And then we'll get started in a little bit here. Give a few more minutes for people to log in. So
Yeah. So we have this sponsor session and also another session going on. So, I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a weird people popping in and out because that's kind of been happening with the multiple sessions.
fair enough. Welcome to the virtual age, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you for the help, though.
Yeah, no problem. And this session is recording also.
Okay. And does that start recording now or as soon as we get going?
I think it's recording right now. I could pause it, but we're also just gonna probably cut it off. Once everything's done, we're gonna trim the edges. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Mhm.
Quick question. When can we expect to get the recording?
Yeah, that's something that we've been working on. We know that a lot of the sessions are pretty long, so it's going to take a while to just kind of compile everything. I want to say, um, give it at least a couple of weeks because a lot of us are also off next week, and we're probably going to prioritize maybe like the keynote and then get other things going as soon as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And currently, right now, are we only speaking with each other, or does the whole group hear us? And I can just let people know we'll get started at 8:30.
So the whole group can hear us, but we're the only
Okay.
ones with videos, so you can say
Okay.
good
Fair
morning to
enough. All right.
everyone. Yeah.
Well, for those joining, then we'll get started right at 8:30. We'll just give a few more minutes for people to log on. So. Okay, well, welcome everybody for today's session. We are going to be discussing financing options in the age of COVID-19. It's a comparison guide for charter schools. What I'll do is quickly kind of go through the options for charter schools. I'll give you a quick agenda, give you a quick introduction of myself. What we'll cover is some financing solutions and factors to consider when looking at those different finance solutions, solutions comparison, and compare them side by side for pros and cons. And then at the end, I can leave a few minutes for questions in case anybody has some questions. So with that, I'll get started. My name is Ryan Eldridge. I'm a senior new business manager at Charter School Capital. I've been with the company for over 7 years, about half of the history of the company. Charter School Capital started back during the last recession, back in the 2007-8 timeframe. And during the last 13 years, we've served over 1.25 million students across the country in more than 700 charter schools. And as an organization, we've invested more than $2 billion in the industry during that time. Charter School Capital really is formed and designed to provide access and leverage and sustain the resources charter school needs to thrive, allowing them to focus on what matters, which is educating students. Basically, we are a specialty finance company that can provide a multitude of resources from working capital, growth capital, bridge financing, facilities financing, enrollment marketing services, energy efficient upgrades to charter schools, and more. So we provide quite a bit of wraparound services as an organization to the charters. From a personal level, we're an organization of about 50 people, most of them primarily based out of Portland, Oregon, with quite a few around the country as well. Amongst us, we have actually 52 students of our own, so that all keeps us focused on why we're doing this. And amongst that, we also have another 29 furry babies to keep us sane during the COVID situation. I think certainly can relax us quite a bit. And the operation itself, the people that work for the organization have quite a bit of experience in charter school finance and operations specifically. And we do really all share the core mission, which is to help charter schools and their students thrive. So with that, I'll get into kind of the main topic of why we're here today. It's official, right? We're in a recession. And I think we've all known this for a while. This is something that is not necessarily new to the California market or other markets around the country. We obviously have ebbs and flow in the economies, and sometimes it impacts the funding models for the students and the schools across the country as well. The purpose of this slide is really to point out kind of the economic impacts that occurred downstream after a recession begins. And as you can see, back in 2000, 2001, 2002 timeframe, we had a similar recession dip in the economy. And then again, back in 2007 into 2007-8 timeframe is really when it started. But what you see is, from a general sales and gross receipts standpoint, individual income taxes, all of these things started to really take a dip years later. So 2008 heading into 2009 is where we really got to the bottom of that curve. And then all of a sudden it starts to come back over time. So eventually we'll dig ourselves out of the hole. We'll get back to normal. But right now, although it started, this recession started back in, June or so, we're going to start to feel the impacts of it, I think, now and for the next couple of years. With that said, you can see also what that impact had on state funding. For this one is California specifically. And if you're looking at what happened back in 2007 or 8 when the recession actually started, we had a year of deferrals that started in California. Well, because the economy just didn't necessarily rebound overnight, those deferrals continued from the previous year into the next, and then they started to add more deferrals on top of deferrals on top of deferrals. And so the real purpose of this is just to say, we don't know what's coming, right? In some states, really hasn't been any kind of impact. In California, we know that there's already a bunch of deferrals that are coming in the spring to start it off. What we don't know is what's happening after that. You know, the previous recession went from multiple years of deferrals on top of deferrals. So we don't know in July, August, September if the state's now going to turn around and say, hey, you know, we're now deferring these payments, or there's going to be a 5 or 10% cut. Different states around the country, for instance, in Georgia, they had a 10% cut to the QBE, or the quality-based education state funding for all schools across the board, both district and charter. In Ohio, they had about a 3% cut to the general funding. In Arizona, however, they didn't have any cuts, and they actually received an additional $200 million in additional state funding. Texas had no cuts. In fact, they also received some additional funding for specific programs there. So, and again, just kind of the premise of this whole thing is that the future, it's just uncertain. Nobody knows what's going to happen and what the next cuts, or if the federal government's going to actually provide some relief, and all of this is going to go away overnight. But there's a lot of uncertainty. And so having long-term planning in place to weather the storm is something that is significant, and something charters should be doing right now to make sure that they're covered no matter what happens. Financing solutions, what we'll cover here is the different financing solutions that are available to charters. So as we go into this, there's a lot of options out there for charters right now. In California, there's state funding options, you know, like the ASAP program, the CSFA's ASAP program, which is like a TRAN designed to fill the deferral needs for schools right now, since those payments are being deferred for months. In other states, they have other state financing programs as well, and each person from a different state should certainly check into their own state fundings available. You know, there's exemptions that you can apply for the deferral financing. There's term loans out there. From a financing standpoint, when you look at traditional funding sources, there's term loans with banks. There's RAN or TRAN offerings. Those are, you know, tax revenue anticipation notes or revenue anticipation notes. And they kind of are structured and work more of like a bond structure, where you can sell a lump sum of money and through a public offering there. Lines of credit for banks. A lot of schools have already had lines of credit in place, or talked to banks about potentially opening up the line of credit. And we'll cover kind of specifics of lines of credit, but it's a good option to have, where you can draw on funds as needed, and you know, have a relationship with a bank in case you need additional financing. And then what I wanted to talk today about is what Charter School Capital developed. And this was specifically around our past history. We financed over 250 charter schools in California alone during the last recession, and kept them afloat during a very tough time. So we opened up the history books, looked back at what occurred from a state funding model, and we figured that we really needed to design a program that would be customized for charters, to give them a peace of mind that they had a resource there in case they needed money, but did not obligate the schools to take the money if they didn't need it. So we created a flexible funding line that gives a capacity of up to 50% of your state revenues to be outstanding at one given time. That basically equates to about 8 months of revenues. And so what that means is, you know, 5 months of deferrals we know are occurring from February through June. So we wanted to make sure the schools were covered in case they needed financing for that amount. But there's also that possibility of what happens next, and what if there's more cuts or more deferrals and I need more cash available on top of that. So we provided another a line of 3 months of additional revenues over and above that. And that means that it could be outstanding at one time, but the line, as those payments are made back, that capacity remains open for the schools. We wanted to give the schools a peace of mind that their cost structure would not change over time. So we provided one low fixed rate that is locked, so the schools know that their rates or cost structures would not change throughout that time. And this does apply for other states. Not all states qualify for the flexible funding line, and you can contact me if you have questions about which ones do and which ones don't. But certainly in California, for sure they do. And the nice part too is a way for Charter School Capital to kind of give back to the charter school space, since our entire company is focused on charter schools and help support them, is that we're actually providing the February deferral payment, which is the longest outstanding receivable, to be out at no cost. So that was our way of donating money back to the schools and providing some relief during this time. So with that, I think there's some areas that you really need to consider when you're looking at financing solutions. You could probably take a look at this and try to rate this as what's the most important to you. Is it flexibility? Is it capacity? Is it certainty? Or is it cost? We think that all of these are important, and it's just up to the school on where they are and what their needs are and what problem they're trying to solve for. So with flexibility, what we really mean is the ability to have the security, but also, again, being able to use the money if you need it, but not necessarily take money that you don't need. So with all the uncertainty taking place with the COVID and the economy, we don't know what's coming next. So you might need a lot more money than you think, and you may not need any of it. So that flexibility to kind of adjust as time and more information comes in is great. With that, capacity. Capacity is, making sure that you have enough of something, right? So if I have a need of $500,000 and I have a bank line of credit or access to $200,000, that's great. I got a part of my problem solved, but what about the other 300,000? And what do I do if I run out of capacity? So that's something to consider as you're looking at your financing options. Certainty is more about the fact that it's going to be there for you. It's more, I know I have enough. I know my rate's fixed. I know that, once I provide the information, I can have pretty much a guarantee that it's going to be there. And, conversely, you also have some uncertainty sometimes when you look at different financing structures where maybe a bank or some kind of organization has covenants built into this agreement and does not allow or has the possibility of possibly pulling that away from you. So the more certainty you have around your financing option gives you peace of mind. And then the last component is really around structure, around cost. And what we really, really want to point out here is when you look at financing options, I think people oftentimes hear rate. And once they hear rate, they think if I got a low rate, that's the best thing I could possibly have. Well, the reality is there's a lot of components that go into total costs. And when I talk about costs, I mean dollars out of pocket. You're paying your teachers in dollars, not rates. So when you look at different finance structures, and we'll get into the detail of this on next slides, is that there's things such as an interest rate, and that can be quoted in an annualized rate or a discount. But basically the rate is applied to the borrowed funds over a period of time. So you're paying on that interest on that period of time. The structure of it, how is it delivered? Is it delivered in one lump sum? Is it delivered as I need it? So the structure can also have an impact on cost, because if I have an outstanding balance for a longer period of time, I'm paying more interest on that structure. And then there's also fees. So fees could include issuance fees, they could include administration fees, origination fees, but oftentimes institutions will have fees associated with the underwriting process and the legal process of putting this financing together, which has to be added into the interest rate and the structure. And all of this has to be weighed in order for you to truly come out and understand what the total cost of using that money is going to be. So I do want to make sure that that's clear. So as I go into the next slide, this is an example if we were to take a look at cost, okay, and give you just some hypothetical situations. Please keep in mind that this example is just that, just an example. Plugging in different fees, different interest rates, different maturity dates for different options. But it gives you an idea of how to look at total cost and compare apples to apples or apples to oranges if you're looking at different financing solutions. So if you were to look at, if I needed to finance, for instance, $1.5 million in deferrals, this would be the same amount of money across the board for all of these options. Now, what we want to talk about first off is term, and this is kind of goes along with structure. If you had a line of credit, there's really not a structure. They typically give you maybe a year or 2 year worth of a line of credit with a bank. And so that term could be about a year to 2 years. You have access to this line for that period of time. And so that will vary from bank to bank. The RAN-TRAN program, with those in California, are obviously familiar with the ASAP program, CSF ASAP program. That maturity date on that specific example is a 9-month maturity. That maturity date is January of 2022. So what they'll do is give you a lump sum on March 31st for all the deferral financing, and it will remain outstanding and will mature on January of 2022. So it will be outstanding for 9 months. A term loan could be upwards of 12 months. That could just be a typical loan, either a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever that term, it could vary. And with the flexible funding line that Charter School Capital is offering, is that it's really not applicable, because you can use what you need as you need it, and it can roll from 1 year right into the next. Once you're approved with us, the school can continue to finance from fiscal 21 right into fiscal 22 and on. So upfront fees, again, are the underwriting cost, anything associated with legal aspects or setting the financing into place. Interest rates are simply just across the board. You know, we're taking averages that we've heard from the market here. And on the ASAP program, they gave ranges on the CSFA's website of anywhere from 2 to 3.5%. So we gave them the benefit of the doubt here and put it at a 2% interest rate. And then loans, just again, average loan terms that we're hearing out there. The 699 here is just an example. We wanted to be fair and in the middle pricing. You know, our range on pricing can go for as low as 499 up to 999 for schools, for new schools. And basically that is just something right in the middle. And it's all determined based on the school's credit as far as age, how they've been around for as long as they've been, and how many students and how much borrowing they need to do. And then the no cost February, this is kind of specific to our program. Again, we're providing the longest outstanding deferral to be at no cost, so therefore it's very specific to our program. None of the other options provide that. Release of funds, you know, how they release the funds. One's a big lump sum, others could be released over time. Again, a term loan's full amount. And then flexible funding lines, completely customizable, take what you want as you need it kind of concept. But what I really want to point out is when you take into all these components and you can play with these kind of metrics, you can plug in a lower upfront fee, a higher interest rate, a lower interest rate, and you're going to come out with different numbers down here on the bottom. And so I would encourage any school to look through their own lens, analyze and compare all the options that they have out there, put them side by side, and then at the end of the day, look at the estimated total cost. How many dollars out of pocket am I spending to use this money for this period of time? And in this example, you can kind of see, obviously, that, you know, we're lower. We can play with these rates and do different situations, and maybe these dollar values will change. But again, my encouragement to all of you out there is look at all your options, compare them side by side. See if you can get lower interest rates, negotiate with people, see what's possible. But you really need to understand the cost component behind all of this. With that said, you know, there's also a lot of options from a standpoint of the pros and cons. When you evaluate it, you're not necessarily looking at just the cost structure. You want to know, okay, my school is a school of 100 kids in its second year. We're okay on cash flows right now, but the deferrals are really going to cause a problem. So I'm really trying to solve for that deferral problem and maybe anything that could come after it. That might be inherently different than a school that is very large, CMO, multiple schools, that has thousands of kids and has in different stages of growth for different schools. And one school may have, you know, a startup issue and needs growth capital right now to make payroll. Others may be very seasoned. So that problem could be across the board and very specific for different schools. And so you have to analyze, you know, what's best for your school at this time and what are you trying to solve for. This comparison matrix is just designed to take into all the considerations. A line of credit, for instance, great. Typically, a line of credit might give you 1 to 2 months of revenues to be outstanding at one time, or a capacity of about 1 or 2 months of revenues. If the problem is greater than 1 to 2 months of revenues and demands capacity to be at least 4 or 5 months of revenues, then maybe it's not a great fit. But otherwise, it could be a very good fit because it could have some low rates. It's easy to draw down on that line. And if it gives you enough capacity, that could be a great option. The other problem with it is that, there could be covenants, restrictions. The banks could pull their line if they get uncomfortable to state funding models. It may not provide enough capacity for you. And so if you max out that line and you needed to go do other borrowing, all of a sudden you could run into the problem where somebody else doesn't want to finance you because you already have a line of credit in place with liens and covenants and restrictions. So consider that. The RAN-TRAN program can be great if you're just trying to finance deferrals and that's all you need. That lump sum of money delivered on March 31st, whether you need all of it or not, can be there guaranteed, in that you could pay it back, in January of 22. The other issue there, though, again, is what happens if you lock into a TRAN or a RAN. It's like a bond structure, which means that there's a lot of covenants and a lot of restrictions. And there's a first priority lien position with a state level interstep. And so what this does is means that before the money even goes out to the school, the state's going to take their payments back over time. And if you ended up needing additional borrowing later, what that could do is cause you a big problem with trying to go to another lender and ask for additional financing or cash, because there's a first priority lien position on that RAN or TRAN, and it would prohibit other lenders to get a first priority lien and give the collateral or liens that they need in order to finance you. So you may not be able to go do other borrowing once you put a structure like that into place. I would say the same holds true for the term loan. Again, any lender typically wants to be in a first priority lien position on whatever collateral they're using to finance the school. So once you put one into place, if it's a very rigid structure that doesn't allow for flexibility to expand on it and give you more capacity later, you're kind of restricted on your ability to go do other borrowing. And therefore, what you're trying to do is create the most flexible line that is the ability to borrow as much as you want whenever you need it, but not have to really commit to it, and doesn't cause your inability to go do other things should you need help or want to go do a facilities financing option. So again, when you run these comparisons, I'm happy to answer any questions for anybody that's out there. If they can reach out to me directly, we can provide proposals, but we encourage you to make sure that you really are going through all of this type of detail when you sit with your chief business officers or your back office providers and executive directors and your board. Put all of these down, put them on paper, analyze the costs, look at the problem you're trying to solve, and then really find out through my lens, what is the best solution for our school at this time based on all of these components. And so, with that, I really appreciate the time. I don't want to take up. I know it's a Friday. It's a Friday before a holiday. I know there's other sessions going on out there. I want to thank RAPSA for the opportunity to actually welcome us here and have us here today. And, again, if you have any kind of questions or you want to just inquire or get some proposals so you can do these evaluations, it's very, very easy. We can make it very painless. Actually, all I need to really know is the name of your school, and I can actually start to put proposals together based on your needs. So happy to do that for anybody that's out there. And again, just to kind of follow up on what we're offering is the February payment at no cost, that would save the school thousands of dollars in potential financing right there. It's a capacity of up to 50% of your annual revenues to be outstanding at any one given time. And then your rate will be locked. You'll have that peace of mind that the cost structure won't fluctuate. And the reality is you don't ever have to use it. In fact, if you wanted to come out and use our free financing on just the February payment, you could do that alone. But happy to answer any questions that anybody may have out there. And I don't think it looks like we have any at this time. So if that's the case, I will give you back a few minutes of your day, and I appreciate all of you joining.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, so our next sessions start at 9, but thank you so much for presenting, and I hope you guys have a good day.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.